Xylok fidgeted with his lower limbs and blinked repeatedly, the intense fluorescent illumination causing his trio of binocular eyes to moisten uncomfortably. Uncertainty gripped him about whether Administrator Kren was genuinely as preoccupied as he'd suggested, or was merely exerting his superiority through a calculated delay. Regardless, the distinction held little consequence considering Xylok's escalating discomfort. Time dragged on interminably until Kren directed a pair of his 6 eyes downward at his junior. "Apologies for the delay," he rasped. "You were to brief me on your societal assessment of the... what is it they call themselves? Terrans, though they possess a multitude of tongues with respective cultural weights. I've encountered designations like Homo sapiens, Etre human, mankind, Ludskos." Xylok ceased speaking as Kren's bottom eyelid darkened with irritation. Kren's penetrating gaze bore into him. "So a broad spectrum of cultural diversity? And by my understanding, their ventures into spacefaring technology are in their infancy. They appear to be a primitive category civilization, potential targets for subjugation." A wave of dread constricted Xylok's vision noticeably, alarming even the typically stoic Kren. A feeble croak emerged from Xylok. No, leader. With the greatest urgency, I counsel against any hostilities toward the Terrans. I am firmly persuaded that initiating a conflict with them would spell catastrophe." Kren's head canted, now scrutinizing his subordinate with all his ocular attention. "Our archives show no instance where a primitive category species presented a meaningful threat or considerable obstruction to the coalition. What prompts you to assert otherwise?" Inhaling deeply, Xylok grasped his data orb between his exoskeletal fingers and launched into his justification. "Leader, they launched a public planetary data exchange merely 3 decades of their solar rotations past, yet they've managed to evolve it into what I can best describe as a consensual collective combat preparation network. They engage in a variety of intricate training exercises referred to as... Our dialect lacks a direct equivalent, but they name them interactive entertainments. A cursory analysis has led me to several alarming inferences." Kren's usual dismissive air was replaced by a burgeoning disquiet, prompting Xylok to proceed. "From basic cognitive trials to complex enactments of conflict across all scales, from battlefield to grand strategy. My concern is drawn to the latter. These enactments often incorporate ritualized components, strict hierarchies tied to achievement. They promote competition, skill enhancement, and dominance. The zeal I've observed in their participants toward these exercises is extraordinary. Some seem so absorbed in refining their competitive edge that they forsake customary social interaction and even neglect their health. This level of martial dedication is, frankly, leader, it's unnerving. I've seen nothing comparable. More troubling is this trend's prevalence among their youth." "Do you imply, procurement officer, are you insinuating their youth are being conditioned for warfare? It's inconceivable. They couldn't have foreseen our arrival?" Kren's claws rhythmically tapped the desk, betraying his unease. "Their historical conflicts and current geopolitical fragmentation suggest they're preparing for internal wars. Yet I cannot confirm this, as a disturbing number of their exercises depict battle scenarios strikingly similar to an extraterrestrial invasion. Whether they've intercepted intel about us or are merely preparing their leaders for a range of conflicts is unclear. But what truly alarms me are the speed challengers." Confusion rearranged Kren's facial plates. Xylok momentarily activated the data orb, projecting images upon Kren's work surface. They've developed a peculiar reverence for their simulation participants in a process they term live broadcasts. As I understand, this involves passive observation of others engaging in simulations, often accompanied by commentary or, significantly, monetary tribute. I deduce live broadcasting is a form of collective learning from seasoned simulation experts. Among various methods, the speed challenge practice is most alarming. This practice prioritizes the refinement of actions and strategies to conclude simulations in the briefest period. Observing these speed challengers, I've witnessed an array of tactics that defy logic, self-preservation, and even the rules of the simulation, all in pursuit of time optimization. They relentlessly measure their performance against peers, and self-reproach follows any shortfall. The implication is dire, leader. Take, for example, a simulation of a lone soldier invading a hostile world with the objective to dismantle their industrial complex and eliminate their leadership. For average participants, this scenario takes about 6 Terran hours, or around 8 of our vlims. Kren's body quivered slightly. An ordinary soldier is expected to conquer an enemy in merely 8 vlims? Leader, I have observed a speed challenger accomplish this feat in less than half a vlim. Kizilok shuffled his upper appendages with apprehension, squinting against the stark fluorescent light that made his 6 eyes sting and tear. He couldn't determine if Administrator Kren was genuinely swamped with work or simply letting him stew as a power play. Either way, Xylok's discomfort was palpable. What felt like an age passed before Kren glanced down at Xylok with a couple of his eyes. "My apologies for the wait," he uttered in a hoarse tone. "You have findings to present on your cultural study of the... What's the term they use? Terrans. They have a multitude of languages that carry significant cultural meaning. I've encountered terms such as Homo sapiens, Itrahumane, mankind, Ludskosk." Xylok stopped as Kren darkened the skin beneath his eyes, a sure sign of irritation. Kren's gaze was intense. A significant cultural variance, then? And they're just scratching the surface of space exploration, if I understand correctly. They seem to be a lower category civilization, prime for domination. Fear constricted all of Xylok's eyes so visibly that even Kren seemed momentarily disconcerted. A weak croak slipped from Xylok. No, leader. I must insist with the highest urgency that we avoid any aggressive moves against the Terrans. I'm deeply convinced that any such aggression would be catastrophic. Kren tilted his head, now fully focusing on Xylok with all 6 eyes. There's no record of a lower category species ever posing a tangible threat, or even a minor hindrance to our coalition. What makes you think otherwise? Xylok took a deep breath, securing his precious data orb between 2 of his hard fingers, and began his reasoning. Leader, they've only had their planetary-wide information network for 3 decades of their solar rotations, but they have transformed it into something akin to a collective combat training system. They engage in a variety of what could be called highly sophisticated training exercises. Our language lacks a precise term, but they call them interactive simulations. My preliminary observations have led me to several disturbing conclusions. Instead of brushing off Xylok's concerns, Kren appeared increasingly worried, prompting Xylok to continue. These interactive simulations range from straightforward cognitive puzzles to elaborate recreations of warfare on every level. From individual combat to grand strategy. It's the latter that raised alarms for me. These exercises include ritualistic elements, performance-based hierarchies. They encourage competition, skill progression, and dominance. The level of dedication I've seen to these exercises is profound. Some individuals are so engrossed that they forgo their species' typical socializing and even neglect their own physical needs to improve their skills. This kind of commitment to martial expertise is disturbing, leader. I've seen nothing like it, and it's particularly prevalent among their younger population. Are you suggesting, officer, do you mean to say they are training their youth for warfare? They couldn't possibly have foreseen our approach. Kren's claws tapped on the desk, a sign of his growing anxiety. Given their historical tendencies and current political divisions, it's more likely they are preparing for conflicts amongst themselves. But I can't be certain because a surprising number of their exercises simulate scenarios remarkably similar to what they'd encounter if we invaded. I can't discern if they have intel on us or if they're simply preparing for all contingencies. But what's most concerning to me is the phenomenon of the speed challengers. Kren's facial ridges shifted, signaling his confusion. Xylok activated the data orb, projecting images onto Kren's workspace. They have this peculiar practice of honoring those who participate in these simulations, which they call live broadcasting. From what I've gathered, this involves others watching these simulations passively, sometimes commenting or notably providing financial support. It seems live broadcasting is a type of collective instruction by experienced simulation participants. The most troubling practice within this is known as speed challenging. It's about perfecting one's actions and strategies to complete a simulation in the least amount of time possible. In my observations, these speed challengers perform a range of counterintuitive, risky, or even rule-breaking maneuvers, all to achieve a faster completion time. They constantly evaluate their performance against others and are harsh on themselves for any failure to excel. The implications are concerning, leader. Consider a simulation that involves a single soldier invading an adversary's planet to dismantle their industrial capabilities and eliminate their leadership. The average completion time by regular participants is about 6 Terran hours, or approximately 8 of our vlims. Kren's posture indicated his growing unease. A single soldier trained to overthrow an enemy world in less than 8 vlims? Leader, I have witnessed a speed challenger complete this task in under half a vlim.